The planet Virelia Prime was known across the galaxy as a symbol of peace, order, and learning, a shining example of how different alien species could live and work together. It had large crystal cities, clean skies, and the most advanced interstellar academy where young beings from across the stars came to study science, art, and diplomacy. This academy was meant to promote peace between species by helping the young understand each other. So, when Earth sent a small group of children to join the academy as part of a cultural exchange program, it was considered a great honor. Everyone believed this would be a moment of history, young humans learning beside young aliens in harmony. But something went terribly wrong. Within 3 weeks of their arrival, a strange and tense message was sent from the Varelian government to the Earth Embassy. Your children have violated school protocols and have been temporarily detained under Article 17. That was all it said. No explanation. No warning. When Earth's ambassador, Sarah Reed, demanded details, she was given vague replies and delays. No one explained why 7 human children, aged between 9 and 13, had been placed in a high-security containment facility meant for violent offenders. The Varelians claimed that the children had responded aggressively during interactions with alien students and had disrupted school harmony. But when the Earth delegation finally received the internal security footage, the truth was different, shocking even. The footage clearly showed the human children being targeted and bullied by several older alien students from 3 different species. In one clip, a spike-tailed youth from the Rozek species pushed a small human boy against the wall. The boy didn't cry. Instead, he calmly pulled the bully's tail in a pressure point that made the Rozek fall over without injury. In another, a human girl blocked a sharp-clawed alien from grabbing her notebook and lightly pushed him back, using her self-defense training to avoid causing harm. None of the children struck first. None of them escalated. They were calm, coordinated, and controlled. The footage didn't show violent attackers, it showed children who had been prepared for danger, trained to protect themselves, and who chose not to fight unless necessary. But instead of punishing the bullies, the Varelians had imprisoned the humans. They claimed it was to maintain order and prevent further conflict. Earth's officials were stunned. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was an insult. Children were being held like criminals in cold containment fields, where gravity flickered, lights buzzed endlessly, and the air carried a chemical stench. When Earth demanded their release under the Galactic Juvenile Protection Agreement, the Varelians hesitated, suggesting that human children were uniquely dangerous and might incite panic if allowed to move freely. The insult grew deeper. On Earth, debates began. News agencies received leaks, and the story spread like wildfire. Human children detained by alien world. People were angry. Protests began outside the Galactic Embassy. Human parents cried on live feeds. Still, the children remained locked away. But then, something strange happened. Late one evening, Ambassador Reed received a secret message from an unknown source. It was heavily encrypted and routed through 6 communication relays. When she opened it, it was only a short text, 6 words, "We're holding. Don't come. They're not ready for us." No name. No signature. But the message had come from within the Varelian detention center and not from any official. Reed stared at the screen for a long time. She knew immediately what it meant. The children were not scared. They were calm. They were thinking. They were planning something. And that alone was more frightening to the Varelians than any weapon. Somewhere in the shadows of that crystal city, 7 human children, bright, brave, and far more capable than anyone had guessed, were doing more than surviving. They were studying their captors, learning the system, and possibly preparing to turn the entire situation upside down. And the Varelians, proud of their rules and sure of their control, had made a terrible mistake, not just by imprisoning humans, but by imprisoning the wrong kind of humans. Children who weren't victims. Children who weren't afraid. Children who were watching and waiting. The message from the imprisoned human children on Varelia Prime spread faster than anyone expected, traveling across communication channels and reaching the ears of many alien diplomats on the nearby neutral space station known as the Concordium. The news struck like a thunderclap. Human children held captive by Varelian authorities. The very idea was difficult for many to believe. To some, humans had always seemed brash and unpredictable, but children? Detaining children from Earth was beyond anything they had anticipated. At a crowded conference room on the station, representatives of various galactic species gathered, their expressions ranging from disbelief to growing concern. The Exarn delegate, with his tall, segmented limbs trembling slightly, recalled a cautionary tale from years ago, where a young human child had single-handedly hacked into his species' communications network using nothing more than a small handheld device. "Do you understand," he said quietly, "what happens when you imprison Earth's children?" There was a murmur of agreement across the room. Another delegate from the Vaynari species, known for their strict adherence to law, warned the Varelians of the dangers in underestimating humanity's youth. "These children," she said, "are not like others. They carry the spirit of a people who have survived countless wars and adversities. You have made a grave mistake." Meanwhile, back on Varelia Prime, inside the cold, glowing containment cells, the 7 human children sat quietly. Their faces were calm, their eyes sharp. No one could hear the small clicks and beeps as they communicated through a secret code they had developed, using the blinking lights of their cells and the hum of the security systems. They were not trying to break out. That would be reckless. Instead, they were preparing for something else, a plan to turn their captivity into power. One of the children, a girl named Maya, was the eldest and the natural leader. She had spent hours reading Varelian law manuals stolen from the guards' data terminals, piecing together how their imprisonment violated intergalactic treaties. She knew that if they could find the right moment and the right voice, they could shift the entire balance of power. Her younger brother, Leo, was quietly modifying a small device they had hidden, something that could send a signal beyond the facility's usual security reach. These children were more than survivors. They were strategists, ready to change the game. Across the galaxy, the Varelian Council found itself under unexpected pressure. The reports of the children's detainment had triggered whispers of old Earth conflicts, where humans had once turned the tide of battle with wit, courage, and unyielding determination. The Council's elders debated fiercely in their tall chambers, trying to decide what to do next. Some wanted to double down, insisting the children be kept under strict control to avoid further human aggression. Others feared that the entire galaxy might side with Earth if the situation worsened. Just then, a sudden burst of static broke through the usual calm of the diplomatic channels. The secret video sent by the children, showing the bullying in their calm defense, was leaked. It was raw and unedited, human children standing their ground, not with weapons, but with courage and calm intelligence. The footage spread quickly, stirring outrage among many species who had always been wary of Earth's sudden rise in galactic affairs, but respected the innocence of youth. The Exarn delegate stood again, calling for an emergency summit, warning that if the children were not released, the entire region could face a diplomatic crisis. Earth's ambassador, Sarah Reed, arrived at the Concordium with a new sense of urgency. She was no longer just a representative pleading for her people. She carried with her a team of legal experts, prepared to argue not only for the children's freedom, but for the rewriting of the very laws that had allowed this injustice to happen. At the same time, the Varelian security forces grew uneasy. Guards stationed near the children's cells reported strange disturbances, systems behaving oddly, communications flickering without cause. Unknown to the Council, the children's Morse code had evolved into a series of complex signals that bypassed normal detection. They were communicating with someone outside the facility, a hidden ally, or perhaps even an unexpected network of friends across the galaxy. One evening, a Varelian guard entered the containment area to perform a routine check. As he opened the heavy door of Maya's cell, she looked up calmly and said, "You want to talk to the leader? We have offers. And blueprints." The guard froze, unsure if he had misunderstood. The children were not begging. They were negotiating. Word of this interaction spread rapidly, creating a mixture of fear and fascination among the officials. The idea that human children could negotiate terms with their captors was unheard of, challenging the very foundation of how alien species treated juvenile detainees. The council was forced to convene again. Some wanted to isolate the children further, while others saw the potential for peace if the humans' demands were met. Outside the formal talks, protests began to flare on multiple planets. Citizens from different species expressed their disbelief and anger over the treatment of the children. Messages flooded social networks. Hashtags like Free Human Kids and Innocency Note Imprisonment trended across star systems. Even those who had little knowledge of Earth or its people felt the injustice deeply. The pressure on Varelia grew overwhelming. In response, a new demand echoed from Earth's ambassador during a tense session: release the children immediately or face serious consequences. The council, once proud and confident, now looked uncertain. The children's quiet strength and intelligence had turned what seemed a simple detention into a galactic crisis. The galaxy was watching, waiting, and wondering what would happen next. Would the Varelians stand firm and face growing isolation, or would they listen to the children who, despite their youth, had already shown the universe what it meant to be human? The answer was unknown, but one thing was clear: the mistake of imprisoning human children was about to change everything. The grand chamber of the Varelian Council was filled with an air of tension unlike anything it had known before. The 7 human children, once prisoners locked behind cold bars and flickering energy fields, now stood before the council, their calm faces betraying none of the fear that should have been expected. Maya, the oldest, had taken the lead, holding a digital tablet that displayed carefully prepared documents and legal texts. Her voice was clear, steady, and surprisingly firm as she addressed the room. She began by explaining the exact ways in which their detention violated the Galactic Juvenile Protection Code, quoting chapter and verse, referencing universal treaties that the Varelians themselves had helped draft. The council members shifted uncomfortably. This was not the simple apology they had expected when the children were first detained. Instead, it was a carefully crafted legal argument backed up by facts and a deep understanding of interstellar law. Maya's team had spent days hidden behind the sterile walls of their cell, learning more than just how to survive. They had become negotiators, diplomats in their own right. Behind her, Leo projected holograms showing the bullying incidents, the peaceful protests the children had attempted within the school, and the repeated failures of the Varelian authorities to protect them from harm. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the holographic projectors. Then Maya laid out their proposals: reparations for the emotional and physical distress, a formal apology broadcast across the galaxy, scholarships for human students in Varelian institutions, and most striking of all, a seat for a human youth representative on the council itself. The oldest Varelian council member, Lord Sol, frowned deeply. "You speak with the confidence of those much older than your years," he said, voice heavy with suspicion. "How can you expect a council to accept demands from children?" Maya's eyes did not waver. "Because we are not just children. We are representatives of a species that has endured much worse and come out stronger. We have studied your laws, and we are prepared to defend our rights, not with violence, but with truth and reason." The council was stunned into silence. No species had ever dared to challenge them so directly and effectively, in such a formal setting, especially not children. The Varelians had always prided themselves on their strict order and discipline, yet here they faced not rebellion but diplomacy unlike anything they had seen. Meanwhile, news of the children's courtroom-style presentation spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. The video feed of the session became a sensation. Viewers watched in awe as the human children stood their ground with sharp minds and unshakable composure. The phrase human-style diplomacy became a new buzzword across the galaxy, praised by many and feared by some. Back in the chamber, tension escalated when one of the children, a boy named Eli, calmly referenced a less-known galactic charter clause that the mistreatment of juvenile students could trigger a wide range of sanctions, including trade restrictions and diplomatic isolation. This caused a murmur among the council members, some exchanging worried glances. It was clear the children were not only demanding justice, but were fully aware of the consequences if their demands were ignored. The Varelian Council realized they were facing more than a legal dispute. They were confronting a challenge to their authority and reputation. In a rare move, the Galactic Union sent an emergency representative, a seasoned diplomat named Vera, to observe the proceedings and mediate. Vera's presence added a new layer of gravity to the situation. She had a reputation for fairness and intelligence, but also for firmness. When she spoke, her voice cut through the tension like a sharp blade. The Council must consider not only the law but the future of interspecies relations. Holding children in detention for acts of self-defense cannot be justified, especially when those acts are minor and within reasonable limits. The Varelians found themselves cornered. The children, though young, had shown strategic brilliance and the ability to unify different species against injustice. Even those who had once doubted humanity's rise began to see the children as symbols of resilience and strength. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted again. A transmission interrupted the session, bringing live footage from the outside galaxy where millions watched the children's video leak. The footage revealed alien students bullying the humans, something the Varelians had tried to downplay or hide. Now, the galaxy saw the truth for itself. Public opinion was turning swiftly against Varelia. Protests erupted on planets across the stars, diplomatic channels buzzed with calls for action, and even the harshest critics of Earth began to speak out. It was no longer just a matter of law, it was a matter of honor, empathy, and galactic unity. In the middle of this upheaval, Maya stepped forward and made a final, bold statement. We do not seek punishment or humiliation for Varelia. We seek understanding and respect. Our proposal is an opportunity for all species to learn from this and grow stronger together. The Council's leader hesitated, weighing pride against the overwhelming pressure from all sides. The children's eyes were calm but filled with a quiet power that seemed to reach beyond their age. This moment would decide more than the fate of 7 children. It would mark a turning point in how humanity was seen throughout the galaxy. Diplomacy, human style, was not about threats or fear. It was about intelligence, courage, and the refusal to be silenced, no matter the odds. The Varelian Council finally agreed to the children's terms with reluctant nods, understanding that the alternative would mean isolation, sanctions, and a loss of trust that could take decades to rebuild. As the chamber emptied, the children were escorted to a safe and welcoming facility, far better than their earlier imprisonment. They had not only won their freedom but had rewritten the rules of engagement between species, reminding everyone that sometimes the youngest voices were the loudest and the strongest. And in that moment, across countless star systems, the galaxy took its first real step toward a new era, one where humanity's light shone bright, led not by force, but by mind and heart. The news of the human children's imprisonment on Varelia Prime spread through the galaxy like wildfire, igniting a storm of anger and disbelief that no one could ignore. Across countless worlds, from the icy moons of Targoth to the floating cities of Zaloris, beings of all species watched in shock and fury as the details emerged. 7 young humans held captive, accused unfairly, their courage turned into chains. Galactic media outlets broadcast the story non-stop, mixing images of the frightened but brave children with footage from the school that showed the alien bullying that had started the whole conflict. Citizens everywhere questioned how a planet so proud of peace and justice could treat innocent children this way. On the neutral space station Concordium, the Center for Interstellar Diplomacy, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Delegates gathered not only from the Varelian Council, but from every major alliance, many of whom had never before been involved in Earth's affairs. Heated debates filled the halls, voices raised in anger and disbelief as species united in demanding answers. The Exarn ambassador, who had once warned about underestimating humanity, now led a coalition calling for a full investigation and immediate sanctions against Varelia Prime. The imprisonment of children is a violation of every moral code we cherish, he declared in a public broadcast that resonated throughout the star systems. If we allow this injustice to continue, it will mark the beginning of a dark chapter in galactic relations. Earth itself was thrown into turmoil. Families of the detained children held vigils, while citizens organized massive rallies outside embassies and spaceports, chanting for justice and freedom. Leaders on Earth knew that this was no longer just a diplomatic issue. It was a symbol of the fragile peace that held the galaxy together. The Galactic Union convened an emergency session, where Earth's ambassador, Sarah Reed, stood firm, calling for not only the release of the children, but for a complete reevaluation of how species treated youth in shared institutions. These children represent the future, she said passionately. If we cannot protect them, then what hope do we have for peace? Virelia Prime found itself isolated, its allies reluctant to defend its actions in the face of overwhelming public opinion and mounting evidence. Behind closed doors, the Virelian Council debated frantically, fearing the loss of influence and the collapse of trust. Yet the children remained at the center of the storm, their quiet bravery turning them into symbols far beyond their years. Their story had become a rallying point for those who believed in fairness and justice across the stars. In the darkness of their new quarters, away from the public eye, but no less watched, the children continued to communicate, exchanging ideas and plans. They knew that their fight was not only for themselves, but for all young beings who might one day face similar injustices. Leo, the youngest, tinkered with small devices to amplify their messages, while Maya wrote letters that were smuggled out to allies in the galactic media and diplomatic circles. Each message was a call to action, a reminder that humanity would not be silenced or broken. Among the various alien species, a surprising wave of support emerged from unexpected places. The peaceful Kalari, known for their empathy and wisdom, openly condemned the imprisonment and offered to mediate talks for the children's freedom. Even some members of the Rizek species, who had originally been involved in the bullying, expressed regret and shame, stepping forward to apologize publicly and support the children's cause. But not all was calm. In the shadows of political intrigue, factions within Virelia's government began plotting. Some saw the children's growing influence as a threat to their power and sought to tighten security, while others worried that resistance might trigger a larger conflict with Earth, potentially sparking war. The tension between these groups added a dangerous layer to the already volatile situation. On the front lines of public opinion, protests became larger and more vocal. Peaceful demonstrations turned into mass gatherings, demanding that Virelia be held accountable. In spaceports and marketplaces, beings from many worlds wore badges and shirts declaring, "Free the human children," turning a quiet story into a galaxy-wide movement. Meanwhile, the children's courage inspired others. Young beings from multiple species sent messages of solidarity, sharing stories of their own struggles and promising to stand with the humans. This growing network of support formed an invisible but powerful alliance across the stars, united by the belief that youth must be protected above all else. At the same time, the Virelian Council tried to manage the crisis by releasing statements claiming the children were under review and that their safety was the top priority. But these statements did little to calm the growing outrage. Investigative journalists uncovered that the so-called review was a facade, and the children remained confined under harsh conditions, fueling even more distrust. With the galactic spotlight shining brighter than ever, the question became not only how this crisis would end, but how it would change the very nature of diplomacy and justice across the universe. The imprisonment of human children had ignited something deeper, a reminder that strength was not only in weapons or politics, but in truth and resilience. As the galaxy watched and waited, the children remained at the heart of this storm, their quiet strength a beacon in dark times. No longer just victims, they had become symbols of hope, courage, and the relentless fight for justice that would shape the future of all species. As the galactic outrage over the imprisoned human children reached its peak, the atmosphere across the star system shifted from anger to anticipation, as if the entire galaxy held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The children, once locked away and silenced, had become a powerful symbol of resilience and unity, and their quiet courage had sparked movements in planets far beyond Virelia Prime. The Virelian Council, overwhelmed by mounting pressure from every corner of the galaxy and facing isolation, finally convened an emergency session unlike any before, where the fate of the children and the future of interspecies relations hung in a delicate balance. Maya, now no longer just a child but a recognized diplomat, spoke again, this time not from behind bars, but in front of the council, her voice carrying the weight of not only her people but of countless allies who had rallied behind her. She spoke of forgiveness, of learning, and of the need to build bridges instead of walls, insisting that this moment was a chance for true change. The council members, many of whom had initially doubted the strength of Earth's youth, found themselves moved and challenged by her words. The stubborn pride that had once blinded them began to crack under the light of truth and humility. Meanwhile, back on Earth and across many worlds, Celebrations erupted as news spread that the children would be freed and welcomed as honored representatives. But the victory was not simply in their release. It was in the promise of a new era, where humanity would rise not by force, but by wisdom and collaboration. The Galactic Union swiftly enacted new laws inspired by the children's case, creating protections for all young beings and ensuring that no species could again be treated unjustly based on fear or misunderstanding. Maya, Leo, Eli, and their friends found themselves at the center of this historic transformation, invited to speak at assemblies, advise leaders, and help craft policies that would safeguard peace and justice for generations to come. Yet, amidst the celebrations, the children never forgot the hardships they had endured, or the friends they had made across species lines. They carried with them a quiet determination to be guardians of those who could not speak for themselves. Their stories spread through schools and cities as a testament to courage and the power of standing firm for what is right, inspiring young and old alike to believe in the possibility of a better future. The Varelian people themselves began to change, recognizing that their treatment of the children had been a mistake born of fear and misunderstanding, and many joined the movement to repair relations with Earth. Trade routes reopened, diplomatic ties strengthened, and a new spirit of cooperation blossomed. As humanity ascended on the galactic stage, it was clear that this was more than a victory, it was a rebirth. No longer just newcomers or outsiders, humans had shown the universe that strength lies in heart, mind, and unity. The children's names were remembered not as prisoners, but as heroes who had changed the course of history. And so, the galaxy moved forward, forever changed by the bravery of 7 human children who taught all beings that even the smallest voices can shake the stars and light the way to a peaceful tomorrow.